haven't seen much change at all when it comes to the number of people registering their firearms with Illinois State Police. If you look at the latest stats, just refresh this page, doesn't look changed from last week. And again, last week's number of total individuals filing a disclosure that they have a banned item was close to 3,500. And that's only about 0.14% of the 2.4 million FOID card holders in the state of Illinois. So obviously, those statistics showing the same that they were when we reviewed this last week. I imagine they could be updated some point today. But the FOID card's been an interesting story here. It's been in place since the late 60s in Illinois. It's a requirement for Illinois residents who want to not just own, but buy not just firearms, but ammunition. And you have to fill out an application. Essentially, it goes to Illinois State Police, and then they handle it from there. But what's fascinating is even just the short amount of time here in the past few years, I'd say 5 to 10 years, we've seen backlogs in the number of FOID card applications. And this is something that has been reported even before the COVID-19 pandemic. And it led to a lot more public-faced reporting that Illinois State Police had to do. So let's go take a look at the state police statistics. You can find this at isp.illinois.gov/FOID/statistics. And it's kind of fascinating because you can see by county how many FOID cards there are. And in total, 2.4 million FOID cards in the state of Illinois, which is, about 12.7 million people. So that's a fair amount of Illinoisans who have complied with the Firearm Owner Identification Act. So you've got some of the numbers here. FOID processing statistics. If you look at, for instance, the number of new FOID card applications received in October, 18,570. And then for those who've been approved, 15,081. 1,300 were denied, and then you have a number of FOID cards revoked at 463. You get to summary, and you can see that as well. So if you go through and you start crunching some of these numbers, you can see whether or not there's a continued backlog just by seeing, for instance, if the 12,000 and the 1,300 adds up to the 14,300 for November of 2022. But bottom line is, you crunch some numbers, you can see how that backlog is being handled. But what happens whenever somebody is, putting a request in and they get denied? Or what happens if somebody puts a request in, they get approved, but then they later get denied? Well, there's a FOID card review process now. While the FOID card's being challenged for its constitutionality, I mean, you've got a couple of different cases where the FOID card is being challenged in state court, but also in federal court. Those cases are still pending. I think one in the federal courts, they didn't set a bench trial until sometime next year, next fall. So we'll be tracking that as it progresses. But the FOID card's been challenged time and again, even in the Illinois Supreme Court, where it's gotten to a certain point, and the Illinois Supreme Court's just like, well, kick it back to the lower courts. One case in particular, a woman had a rifle in her home, felt threatened by an ex-partner, and then police found the rifle in her home. She didn't have a FOID card. So the question is, well, I mean, it's the Second Amendment. Should somebody have to have a FOID card if they're just keeping a rifle at home? She didn't take it out and walk down the street with it or anything like that. But so that was an interesting case, and I think it's been put back to the lower districts to deal with some of the other questions. But regardless, you have other instances, especially when it comes to the FOID card of here's a story, WLDS reporting that you've got two Springfield residents who were charged by the Illinois Attorney General's office for forging FOID applications. And it talks about, the story of a couple of individuals that put down false information. Talking about the firearm owner identification card, a 33-year-old and a 23-year-old putting down fraudulent information when applying for the card. So, that obviously is something that could possibly be brought up in courts. And if they want to challenge the charges, I guess they could. But others, maybe they don't go to court. Maybe they get denied their application and the backlog persists and they can't get any answers. Well, state police did have to, at one point, have some kind of process in place, but it wasn't necessarily as strictly adhered to as maybe it could have been. So they did create a firearm owner identification card review board, and they had a couple of individuals who were approved for the FOID review board, and some good questions about the process here, but also just the how the FOID card can really, in a way, cause some issues with individuals who are wanting to exercise their Second Amendment rights. So here's a little bit from a Senate Executive Appointments Committee during veto session earlier this month.
I believe that law requires that there is, I'm sorry, I'm losing the terminology for it, but like an indication on the FOID card that an individual has registered their firearms. I understood from the state police that they are not going to do that, that they're just going to keep a record that the person has filed that affidavit.
That's State Senator Terry Bryant just asking a question of one of the appointees to the FOID card review board, Aaron Alexander. Alexander said that's a little bit beyond their perspective, because really what they do is they field those objections and people wanting to have those objections reviewed to possibly have a different outcome. And here's some of the overview of sorts from the board member, Aaron Alexander, about how they handle certain types of requests from the public who are challenging the outcome of their FOID card status.
If someone has had their card denied or revoked for a specific set of reasons, they come before our board. So those reasons would be mental health admissions and clear and present danger incidents for the last 5 years, law enforcement requests for expedited relief after a mental health admission, certain misdemeanors and certain felonies. And so when those cases come to us, we ask the appellant to complete packets and send in information related to the incident, the prohibiting incident. And for those who have mental health admissions or clear and present danger incidents for less than 5 years ago, they also have to submit a forensic evaluation. So we review the documents that are related to the incident in question. That can include documentation from police who have been involved in that investigation or who completed a documentation about a concern about that citizen. We review the forensic evaluations for those appropriate cases. The appellants also can submit documentation on their own behalf detailing what occurred. They can have people submit documents to support their application, and we review all of that material and discuss it as a board, and we make a determination on the case.
And then one last question then. So of those appeals that have come before your board, in the time that you've been on the board, do you know how many of those appeals have actually ended with the result that the person had their FOID card returned to them?
So to date, we've heard a total of 256 petitions. We've continued 81. 163 petitioners have been granted relief and 12 have been denied.
12. Okay, thank you very much.
So that's kind of interesting to hear some of those numbers. And
Thank
as
you.
far as
No further questions.
the number of applicants and the number of those who've been granted back their FOID cards, the number of those who've been continued as they want more information, but then those who've been denied altogether. Another FOID card review board member being approved by the Illinois Senate earlier this month, Raymond Moore, also talked a bit about this whole process.
There was a recent audit, again referring to the recent audit of state police,
It's Terry Bryant.
where they were not in a timely way processing FOID applications. Does that come before your board at all when those applications are not processed properly? And it was a repeat finding.
And I will interject and say that, again, recall that the FOID card delays were tens of thousands, and people were waiting, 6 months to a full year, if not longer, to get their FOID card. I've got somebody that's reached out via email that I have yet to respond to. I've just been on vacation and not checking my email nearly as much as I should, or sitting at a computer nearly as much as, well, I don't think anybody really should sit at a computer very long, but regardless. And people are still having delays in their FOID applications, in their FOID process. even though you had, of course, this new law come about making the FOID card, a permanent type of thing and a revolving type of thing. But regardless, still some problems with the FOID card and the backlogs. And you've had the Illinois auditor even review all of this. But anyways, back to Terry Bryant asking Raymond Moore questions about the FOID card process and the review of those who feel that they've been wronged by this.
So can you tell me what your board would, how you would be related with that?
So my board gets involved once a person has been denied or has had their FOID card revoked. At that point, it's incumbent upon the petitioner to appeal that decision to our board. And if it qualifies as one of the types of situations that we handle, such as mental health, clear and present danger, law enforcement expedited hearings, or persons charged with certain criminal offenses, we review those. And to my understanding, my board, we don't have a backlog at this point. I actually reached out to our staff in preparation for this and asked that very question. So as far as what we handle, I don't believe there is a backlog. As been indicated before, we've heard a total of 256 petitions, and we've continued 81 of those and granted relief to 163 and have denied 12. So I think we are meeting monthly. The statute requires that we meet quarterly, but we've been meeting monthly and handling quite a bit of these petitions in a timely manner.
So these petition statistics rather fascinating. I figured I'd just get some of that information out for you so that you know the process at least. There seems to be a process in place, and they are fielding objections and questions and making sure that they work through those. But it's something that Illinoisans who want to, comply with the law to be a firearm owner, they have to get a firearm owner's identification card. I think Illinois is one of 4 states that have a similar type of scheme. But other states, you just get a background check at the gun store. That's really the process there, the screening process. Illinois does that as well, but they also have this FOID card process that plays out. There's been some pitfalls where the FOID card process didn't work necessarily as people may have wanted it to. One being the suspect in Highland Park shooting. He got a FOID card regardless of 2 instances of police showing up to his house, including one where they told state police that he had a clear and present danger. They had another case of the 2019 Aurora, warehouse shooting that happened where the individual had his FOID card revoked, but state police didn't actually go and take the FOID card. So there's a lot of interesting moments where the FOID card being in place didn't really help, or has anybody really been held accountable for some of those lapses? So regardless, I think the FOID card obviously is something that we're going to continue to monitor, especially with litigation against the FOID card, both in state and federal courts. And we'll have to follow up and see where those cases are. I'm Greg Bishop. Thanks for hanging out. Be sure to like, subscribe, follow along. Bishop on Air. Just search all one word, Bishop on Air, and you can find it on pretty much any of the social medias. But YouTube's a great place to hang out with us live each and every weekday morning. About 7:40 Central is when we tune in. I know there's a lot more people also tuning in from other states as well, which is pretty remarkable to have. So thanks for checking out what we're doing here with Bishop on.